Every day, you do something strange without ever stopping to think about it. You hand a complete stranger a small piece of paper, and somehow, they hand you back something real. Food, fuel, things you actually need to live. Nobody questions it. It just quietly works every single time. So let's actually ask the question everyone skips. Pull out a bill from your wallet if you've got one nearby and take a real look at it. It's paper, ink, and cotton fiber, worth maybe a few cents to actually produce. And yet you'd fight someone who tried to take it from you. Why? Because at some point, without ever agreeing to it out loud, you joined the biggest shared agreement in human history. So what actually is money? Billions of strangers all over the planet quietly agreeing the same thing is true at the same moment every single day. Today, we're going to find out how that agreement started, who's been quietly rewriting it ever since, and where it's taking us next. Here's the version most of us were taught in school. Long ago, people traded chickens for shoes and shoes for grain until someone got tired of carrying chickens around and invented money. It's a tidy story, clean, logical, easy to teach. It's also, as far as anyone can actually prove, mostly made up. Anthropologists have spent decades looking for a society that ran purely on barter, trading goods directly, stranger to stranger, with no money at all. They haven't found one, not one, at any real scale, anywhere in the historical record. What they found instead was something stranger and, honestly, more human. Small communities didn't trade. They remembered. You take my grain this season. I'd take your labor next season. Nobody kept score with objects. They kept score with memory and trust and the simple fact that we'd see each other again. Debt came first, not coins, not shells. Debt between people who knew each other's names. The question that actually matters isn't what do we trade. It's how do you trust someone you'll never see twice? That question is the entire reason money exists. To understand the answer, we have to go to one of the strangest currencies that ever existed. A small island in the Pacific called Yap in what's now Micronesia. For centuries, the people of Yap used money that looked nothing like money. Massive stone discs, carved from limestone, some of them 12 feet across. Some weighed more than a car. Nobody was slipping one of these into a pocket. Here's where it gets strange. The stones almost never moved. A family might pay for something enormous, a boat, a marriage, a debt, and the giant stone would just stay exactly where it was. Everyone on the island simply updated their understanding of who owned it. There's even a documented case of a stone that sank to the bottom of the ocean during transport and was never recovered. The island kept using it as currency anyway. Everyone agreed it still counted. So it did. Sit with that for a second, because it's the whole answer hiding in plain sight. The stone was never the money. The agreement was the money. The rock was just where everyone happened to point. Keep that idea in your back pocket. We're going to need it again by the end of this video. Stones worked on a small island where everyone knew everyone. But as trade grew and strangers started doing business with strangers, humanity needed something a memory couldn't provide: proof. Around 600 BCE, in the kingdom of Lydia, in what's now Western Turkey, someone had an idea. Stamp a piece of metal with a mark guaranteeing its weight and purity. Suddenly, you didn't have to trust a stranger's word. You had to trust the stamp. The first coins were born, and with them, something new, money that carried its own proof of value, wherever it traveled. It spread fast. Within a couple of centuries, coinage was showing up across the Mediterranean, the Middle East, and beyond. But metal is heavy, and empires were about to get very, very large. Fast forward to Tang Dynasty China, merchants moving goods across vast trade routes. Carrying enough coins to buy a caravan of silk meant carrying an actual wagon full of metal. So merchants started doing something clever. They'd deposit their coins with a trusted dealer and take home a paper receipt instead. The receipt wasn't the wealth. It was a promise. And the promise was light enough to fold into a sleeve. By the Song Dynasty, around the year 1023, the government took the idea and ran with it. They issued the world's first official state-backed paper currency. It was called jiaozi, worthless material, ink on paper, but backed by the authority of an empire, and suddenly it was wealth. China had discovered something the rest of the world would take centuries to catch up to. Money didn't need to have value. It just needed something powerful enough behind it to make people believe it did. For most of the centuries that followed, paper money played by one rule. Somewhere, in a vault, real gold was sitting behind it. Bring in your paper, and in theory, you could walk out with the metal. It made paper feel safe, solid, backed by something you could hold. Then came August 1971. The United States, facing pressure on its gold reserves, did something that quietly changed the entire world. President Nixon ended the dollar's convertibility into gold. Permanently. Overnight, the world's most powerful currency stopped being a promise for something physical. It became a promise for nothing but itself, backed by trust in a government and nothing underneath that but agreement. Economists still argue about what exactly changed that day, but something clearly did. Every major currency on Earth today runs on that same idea. Not gold, just belief at a massive, coordinated scale. Here's something that story usually leaves out. Not every currency gets believed in the same amount. Some paper crosses borders freely, gets stockpiled by other countries, and quietly runs the world's trade behind the scenes. Other currencies barely make it past their own border before people start asking for something else instead. Why does one nation's paper become the currency the entire planet trusts, while another nation's paper can lose half its value in a year? The answer involves war, empire, oil, debt, and a handful of decisions made in rooms most of us never heard about. It's one of the most consequential, least understood stories in modern history. And it's genuinely a whole story on its own, one we're going to tell properly in its own video very soon. For now, just hold on to the question. Why do some kinds of trust travel farther than others? While all that was happening, something else was quietly unfolding. Money was starting to disappear. Not literally, just physically. Your salary lands in an account you'll never touch as cash. Your rent leaves without a bill ever changing hands. For most of us, most of our money now exists as nothing more than a number in a database somewhere. Which brings us back to those stones on that island in the Pacific. In 2009, an anonymous creator published an idea for something called Bitcoin. The pitch was strange and honestly kind of familiar. What if you could trust a stranger anywhere on Earth without a bank or a government or a stamp? What if, instead, everyone just kept a shared public record? Together, all at once. Everyone agrees on who owns what, because everyone can see the same ledger. Sound familiar? It should. It's Yap Island, rebuilt out of code instead of rock. The same idea humans had thousands of years ago on a small Pacific island just came back wearing a different outfit. Now governments are racing to build their own digital currencies. Central banks, piloting programs most people haven't even heard of yet. The form keeps changing. Shells, stone, metal, paper, numbers, code. The idea underneath it never has. So what actually is money? It was never the shell, or the stone, or the bill in your wallet. It's the oldest trick our species ever pulled off, getting millions of strangers to trust each other without ever meeting, using nothing but a shared story everyone agrees to believe. That story has worn a lot of different outfits over 11,000 years. It's about to wear a few more. And somewhere down the line, whatever comes next is going to feel just as invisible and just as obvious as the paper in your pocket does right now. If this got you thinking differently about something you use every single day without a second thought, that's genuinely the whole point of this channel. So if you learned something new, or it changed how you'll look at your next paycheck, hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming, drop a like, and share it with someone who'd find it interesting too. I want to know what you want to see next. Drop a topic in the comments, something you've always wondered about but never actually looked into. And remember that question we set aside earlier. Why some currencies quietly rule the world while others don't? That's next. Until then, next time you hand someone a bill, remember, you're both just agreeing to keep the story going.